Before you step into this story, take a breath and imagine what it means to protect someone the world doesn't understand. To raise a child everyone doubted, to keep records when no one else was paying attention, and to find out, years later, that those quiet pages could save your whole life. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching or reading from, because this one's about more than family. It's about truth, love, and the power of proof. If you believe every story deserves to be told honestly, hit that red heart button, share this video, and subscribe to Revenage Tales by Camera, where every week we uncover real tales of strength, redemption, and the kind of love that leaves evidence. Now, let's begin. My name is Marlene Cole, and I'm 66. We're a Black family from the Lowcountry, and like a lot of us, I've learned to keep records the way other folks keep prayers. Close, careful, and ready when the world starts doubting what you lived. 12 autumns ago, my daughter Danica showed up at my porch in Crescent Bay, South Carolina, with her little boy, Taryn, and one small backpack that felt too light for even a weekend. He was 4, narrow-shouldered, eyes fixed on the porch boards, rocking heel to toe with his palms pressed flat to his ears. "Just for a couple days, Mama. I need a breather," she said, already backing toward her car. There was no hug, no kiss, just the red of her tail lights folding into the live oaks. I'd taught elementary school for 3 decades. I'd had autistic students in my classes, yes, but always with aides, plans, and specialists steering the hard parts. Standing in my doorway with Taryn humming like a bee's nest, I realized how little I knew about living this life hour by hour. He wouldn't meet my eyes. The fridge hummed. He flinched. The heater clicked. He pressed his hands tighter. I put a yellow plastic cup, his cup from rare Sunday visits, on the floor within reach and waited. He kept rocking. That first night he refused nuggets, pasta, sandwiches, everything. He ate 3 crackers and screamed when I tried to help him brush his teeth, not crying but screaming like pain. I tucked a blanket around him. He threw it off. I left it folded at the foot of the bed and sat in the hallway until his humming softened with the dawn. I called Danica the next morning. No answer. Afternoon. No answer. Sunday came and went. Then a week slid past like rain down glass. At the clinic, the pediatrician confirmed what my bones already knew. "He's on the spectrum," she said gently. "Has anyone talked with you about evaluations?" I stared at the floor and nodded. His mother was supposed to handle that. The doctor didn't judge. "Then we'll start now." We started. Speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavioral support. I learned that breakfast had to be exactly the same. Scrambled eggs, toast cut diagonally, nothing touching on the plate. I learned that our driving route could not change by even a block. I learned to keep my hands close but not on him unless he reached first. 2 weeks in, I found Taryn kneeling beside a bin of toy cars. He'd arranged them in a flawless gradient, red to orange to yellow to chartreuse, so subtle I had to squint to see the steps. "That's extraordinary," I said. He kept arranging, the hum barely there now, his shoulders unwinding like a quiet mercy. December rolled in. No calls. On Christmas Eve, I was cutting sugar cookies, the kitchen warm with vanilla and butter, when the phone finally rang. Danica's voice was flat and tired. "I can't do this, Mama. He's yours." Before I could breathe, the line went dead. The cookies burned black. I slid to the floor with the sheet in my hands and didn't realize Taryn had patted in until he set the yellow cup beside me, exact as an offering, and went back to the living room. I cried until the oven cooled. The years took shape around sameness. Same breakfast. Same TV show on Tuesdays. Same bedtime cadence. Good night from the doorway. A beat of silence, then my steps retreating, so he could trust they would always retreat the same way. At 6, he fell in love with magnetic letters, not to spell but to sort. At 7, the marks he drew, ticks, circles, lines, became letters. At 8, letters became sentences. He learned to glance at my eyes in quick bright flickers. We learned the quietest hour to shop for groceries. And he learned that I would not leave. One spring morning when he was 8, he sat at the table with his little notebook. "Why did my mom go?" The spatula slipped in my hand. It was the longest sentence he'd ever said to me. She said she couldn't handle it. I answered, because truth is a salve even when it stings. He nodded once, wrote "couldn't handle" in neat block letters, and turned the page. By fourth grade, I thought we'd settled our storm. Then Principal Caraway called to say Taryn would be better served in a separate classroom. Not for academics, he emphasized in that soft, tidy tone I knew too well. For behavior, group work, circle time, music volume, sensory issues. I requested an IEP meeting and arrived with a binder fat as a church fan in July. Therapy progress notes, reading assessments, 7th grade level, math tests, 2 grades ahead, and a list of accommodations Taryn's therapist, Dr. Nia Porter, recommended. Noise-dampening headphones for music, extra time for transitions, a calm space when overwhelmed. The team talked about social growth and peer expectations. I talked about the law and the least restrictive environment. I shouldn't have said segregation, but I did. And then I handed over data. In the end they agreed, headphones, transition supports, a quiet corner, not removal. That night, Taryn stood by the kitchen table, watched me file our notes, and said, "You sort good, but not best." Then he reorganized the therapy section by date, then by type, speech, occupational, behavioral, cleaner than my years would have dreamed. I watched his hands and thought, this child understands order like it's a native tongue. When Taryn turned 9, Dr. Porter suggested a tablet to help when speaking felt like wading uphill. He mastered it in a day and, within a week, began scanning every page of his notebooks. "So I don't lose it," he said. From then on, everything lived twice, on paper and in his small machine. He noticed patterns everywhere. Red lights that stayed longer than others. Grocery receipts mispriced by 3 cents. Faces that smiled with mouths but not with eyes. "He doesn't like me," Taryn said once about the principal after a conference. "How can you tell?" His eyes stayed flat. I drove home in silence, newly aware of how much truth lives in muscles we ignore. At 11, he corrected a teacher's long division mistake in front of the class. He was right. It didn't matter. They asked whether he might be oppositional. I brought 6 months of notes. Dr. Porter wrote plainly. Direct, literal, not defiant. We won that round, too. That winter, Taryn asked for everything with my name on it, birth certificate, enrollment forms, any official scrap. We scanned it all. I thought he was stitching together his history. I didn't realize he was building a shield. The next summer, he discovered code on my old stuttering laptop. Python, he murmured, eyes bright. By August, he'd written tiny programs to sort files by date, find duplicates, and warn if anything had changed. Like a fingerprint for a document, he explained, and when he altered a single word, the signature shifted. "So things stay true," he said, catching my breath better than I could. I told him it was brilliant. He shrugged. "It's just patterns, digital ones." I believed we were simply surviving. Taryn was doing more. He was laying out a road of receipts, calendars, and proofs so precise that nobody could walk it and pretend the route had been different. By the time Taryn turned 12, the scanning had a purpose I could finally name. He wasn't hoarding paper, he was teaching our life to keep its own receipts. Every calendar square, every receipt, every therapy note lived in a lattice of folders he'd woven so tightly you could pluck any date and watch a whole week ring like a bell. That June he found a new language, code, on my wheezing old laptop. "It helps me sort what the world tries to smudge," he said without looking up. He wrote little tools that tidied files, compared versions, and warned if a sentence shifted by even a comma. "Documents leave tracks," he told me. "You just have to know where to look." For his birthday, I scraped together savings and bought him a desktop that didn't need 5 minutes of prayer to turn on. He promised to sleep and then did what bright children do, he forgot. I'd wake at 2 in the morning and see his door glowing, leave apple slices on his desk, and whisper, "Enough for tonight." "Almost," he'd answer, which meant not yet. At 13, he asked to digitize my binders, the school fights, the clinic visits, the IEPs, all of it. "So no one can rewrite what already happened," he said. He added verification codes and chained each file to the next so tightly that if you tugged one, you felt the whole line pull back. By 14, his programs stopped being experiments and started being instruments. He showed me how a simple letter, birth certificate, consent form, whatever it was, wore a signature the naked eye couldn't catch. Pressure patterns, spacing habits, angles of slant. He could tell when a name wore a mask. The world locked down the spring he turned 15, but our house hardly noticed. Taryn had been living in the glow of monitors for years. One humid afternoon he called me to his room and opened a clean, quiet interface. "This is the ledger line," he said. "It checks whether a document is what it claims to be, when it was born, how it changed, whether a signature belongs to the hand that signed it." I watched the program read a page like a conductor reads a score. Tempo, pressure, pauses, returns, then flag a single altered word the way a trained ear hears a misnote. "Who would use this?" I asked. "Anyone tired of being lied to," he answered, plain as water. He sent emails to companies with names I'd never heard, and to my surprise the first to answer was a boutique risk firm in Durham. They bought a small license for $18,000. "Too low," he said, "but proof." Proof begot interest. Calls turned into demos. Demos turned into contracts. By winter he'd outgrown his savings account, and my understanding in equal measure. I found us a lawyer who understood technology and people in the same breath, Attorney Sinclair Dove, a black man with patient eyes who drove down from Colombia and sat at our kitchen table like he was born there. He spread out offers. Some wanted long-term licensing. Others wanted everything: code, ownership, name, for a clean price and a 4-year promise not to build anything similar. Taryn scanned terms like they were math problems. "I don't want to run a security company," he said at last. "I want to make something and hand it off." He signed an acquisition for $2.9 million with a mid-sized tech firm out of Charlotte. I pressed my palm to the counter to steady myself. 32 years of teaching hadn't brought me half that before taxes. The local news heard. They filmed him at his desk, camera hungry for a miracle, music swelling like they were narrating a comet. Taryn didn't play the part. "I wanted a way to tell what happened from what's invented," he said into the lens, face neutral, voice steady. The segment ran on a Friday. Neighbors texted heart emojis. Church mothers left pound cakes. Taryn stood at the window and watched the street like he was listening for thunder. 2 Tuesdays later, the doorbell rang. On the porch stood Danica, older at the edges, smile pressed on like powder, beside a man in a dark suit holding a leather briefcase. "Hi, Mama," she said, trying to sound soft. "This is Mr. Vallon, my attorney." I should have closed the door. Instead, habit made me hospitable. Taryn came to the hallway, face as still as a pond before rain. He didn't flinch. "Come in," he said, and the house went tight around my ribs. At the kitchen table, our table, where we filed IEPs and therapy notes, and where his yellow cup lived to the right of his plate, Mr. Vallon slid out papers that glowed with stamps and signatures. He talked about parental rights never terminated, consistent financial support, and shared decision-making from a distance. Danica tilted her head, grief soft. "I never stopped being his mother," she said. "Now that the money and attention are here, he needs guidance." The figures were neat. The seals looked official. The story was rehearsed. I said, "No," and my voice shook. "No, you didn't call, you didn't write, you didn't send $1. But all I had was the truth, and a lifetime in classrooms had taught me truth without proof is just another opinion to people who like their paperwork stamped. Taryn leaned back, watching as if he were timing a traffic light. When Vallon finished, he looked at me for one heartbeat and then at Danica. "We'll get counsel," he said, tone even as a level. We hired Sinclair for the business. For family court, he sent us to attorney Joy Ellison, a black woman whose office smelled like peppermint and old books. She came to our house, studied the stack Vallon had served, and frowned. "These are skilled forgeries, if they're forgeries," she said, "careful with the if because lawyers kiss truth only after evidence as I do. We can prove you've been primary caregiver. What we need is proof that these didn't come from where they claim they did." That night, when the house was quiet, I cried at the table until the wood looked darker. I wanted Taryn to be a boy so I could tell him it would be all right and have him believe me. He rose without a word and went to his room. The keys started clicking, soft, steady, relentless, as if somewhere inside the code there lived a tide that knew how to turn. Tomorrow, Joy warned us the next day, they'll tell a tidy story. Don't react. Let them talk. Taryn didn't smile. That's the plan, he said. The hearing prep felt endless. Attorney Joy Ellison stacked papers across our dining table, Danica's so-called records on one side, my binders on the other. Her version looks polished, Joy said, flipping through the custody filings. Dates match, signatures consistent, stamps where they should be. If we can't prove fabrication, the court might favor her on technical grounds.
My throat went dry.
But she disappeared for more than a decade. Joy's gaze softened. And yet, on paper, she's still his legal guardian. You raised him out of love, not law. That's what we have to change. Taryn sat quietly at the end of the table, fingers laced, eyes fixed on nothing. He didn't fidget, didn't interrupt, didn't look afraid. I couldn't tell whether he understood how close we were to losing everything, or whether he'd already started building a way out. 3 days later, Danica gave her deposition first. She came in dressed like Sunday service, powder blue suit, soft curls, hands folded in practiced grace. Her attorney, Valen, guided her gently through her lies. I visited every other month, she said, her tone carrying a tremor of sincerity. I sent support through cashier's checks, 200 here, 500 there. I called every birthday. I just wanted him to have stability with my mother while I got on my feet. I gripped my seat so tight the vinyl creaked. Joy whispered, don't react. Danica even gave specific dates. March 2013, August 2015, December 2018, each one sliding off her tongue like memorized scripture. When it was my turn, I told the plain story. No calls, no visits, no money. But plain truth sounded dull beside her polished fiction. Joy did her best to anchor the narrative, pointing to school reports and therapy schedules that showed my handwriting my payments. Yet every fact we produced felt small beside her theatrically detailed records. That night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. The old heater hissed. The refrigerator clicked. Somewhere beyond the wall, Taryn's keyboard tapped its quiet Morse code until near dawn. The next morning, Joy brought hard news. They've filed for financial guardianship only. They're not trying to move him, just to control his assets until he's 18. 2 years, I whispered. 2 years is still everything. She nodded. Without direct proof of forgery, they could win. My pulse thudded in my ears. Taryn was in his room, door cracked, light glowing on the wall. I stepped inside. He was surrounded by monitors, 3 of them now, each one running lines of code and folders labeled in the neat, spare language he loved. Taryn, baby, I don't know how to fight this. He didn't look away from the screen. Tell the truth tomorrow. She's got fake proof. He typed another command. Then the proof will show itself. I didn't understand what that meant, and he didn't elaborate. I left him there, bathed in the pale light of the monitors, his face calm as moonlight on water. Court convened in Columbia County Family Hall, a narrow room smelling faintly of lemon polish and nerves. The judge, Honorable Laura Hines, presided, sharp-eyed, mid-50s, posture that said she'd seen every excuse. Danica sat beside her lawyer in a cream blouse, the picture of contrition. I sat across from them, hands trembling in my lap. Taryn, in his best navy shirt, was composed, so still he seemed carved. Valen spoke first, smooth as a radio host. Your Honor, my client never relinquished parental rights. She contributed consistent support and stayed engaged through correspondence. He displayed documents with embossed seals, color copies of money orders, visitation logs written in my daughter's looping script. They gleamed like truth dressed for church. When Judge Hines invited Danica to testify, she leaned into her role. I just want to be part of my son's life again, she said, voice trembling perfectly. I made mistakes, but I never stopped caring. I could feel the judgment leaning her way. Joy rose, introduced my folders, school records, Therapy invoices, attendance charts, all genuine, all unimpeachable but unglamorous. The judge nodded politely, unreadable. Do you have documentation of legal guardianship, Ms. Ellison? Joy exhaled. My client acted as guardian in practice, though no formal court order was issued. That one sentence felt like a door slamming. The judge folded her hands. Then, as it stands, legal custody remains with Miss Cole's daughter. My heart dropped to my shoes. Danica's attorney smiled faintly, already certain he'd won. Then the judge looked at Taryn. Young man, she said, would you like to say anything? He rose slowly, shoulders squared, voice calm. Yes, Your Honor. I have evidence. Joy turned to him in surprise. Taryn. It's okay, he murmured. Let her talk. He stepped forward carrying his backpack, set it gently on the witness stand, and drew out his slim black laptop. May I connect to the courtroom display? He asked. Judge Hines blinked, curious. What are you showing us? Verification data, he said. I built a system that detects whether documents are real or forged. A murmur rippled through the room. Valen shot to his feet. Objection. This evidence wasn't disclosed. Your client submitted her own documents only 6 weeks ago, Taryn replied evenly. I analyzed them the same week. The judge lifted a hand. Proceed. I'll decide relevance. He plugged in the cable. The projector blinked to life. Rows of text and color graphs filled the screen. These are the custody papers filed by Ms. Danica Cole, Taryn said, clicking through. Each claims to have been created between 2011 and 2020. But their digital fingerprints, the embedded metadata, show they were all produced on the same device on March 7, 2025, exactly 13 days after the television segment aired. Gasps spread through the gallery. Valen fumbled for words. Metadata can be altered, he protested weakly. Not the kind verified by my system, Taryn said. Each file's checksum links to the next in a chain. If you edit one, the whole chain collapses. These didn't exist before March 7th. He pulled up Danica's money order images next. These supposed payment receipts share the same background pattern, the same pixel grid. They weren't scanned individually. They were generated. Judge Hines leaned forward. How do you know that? Because I built the program corporations use to find counterfeits. It's been tested and certified. You built it? Yes, ma'am. I sold it last year. The judge's eyes widened, recognition dawning. The verification software from the news segment? Taryn nodded once. That's mine. The room went silent. The courtroom had gone still. Even the air felt paused. Judge Hines folded her hands, studying Taryn with a look that wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was respect laced with disbelief. All right, Mr. Cole, she said slowly. Show us what you have. Taryn nodded, calm as ever. He clicked open the first file. The so-called custody agreement Danica had paraded into court like a badge. This document claims to have been signed in September 2012, he said, his voice even unhurried. But this embedded timestamp shows it was created on March 7, 2025, the same week the news story about my software aired. The screen filled with code-like data lines and colored graphs. Even I couldn't follow all of it, but I could see how sure he was. Every document tells on itself, he said softly. You just have to know how to listen. Danica shifted in her seat. Her attorney, Mr. Valen, adjusted his tie, then muttered, These are technical assumptions, Your Honor. Taryn turned another page. This next file contains my mother's signature, he said, highlighting both signatures side by side. One from my old mortgage cosign form in 2009, one from the custody papers. The spacing, slant, and pressure are different. Even the pen stroke rhythm changed. The second signature was traced digitally, not written by hand. Judge Hines leaned closer to the monitor, frowning. You're saying this was forged? Yes, ma'am. By someone copying her old handwriting pattern onto new documents. He ran the program again. Here are comparison scores. Genuine signature on the left, forged on the right. A difference of 0.78 on a scale where anything above 0.35 flags forgery. A hush fell over the room. Then he turned to me, his voice steady. I also imported the family calendars, phone logs, and bank records we scanned over the years. None show contact, payments, or visits from her during the years she claims to have been involved. He pulled up a grid of dates, therapy appointments, school meetings, grocery receipts, every square filled with the quiet proof of ordinary days. Her story skips 11 years, Taryn said simply. Ours doesn't skip any. I looked at the judge's face, unreadable, but no longer distant. Danica's voice broke the silence. He's lying, she snapped suddenly, her calm veneer cracking. He's twisting data. He always does this, Ma'am, said Judge Hines sharply, you'll wait until you're addressed. Danica swallowed, tried again in a softer tone. Your Honor, I don't know about computers, but I know what I lived. I love my son. I sent money. I called. Maybe I lost receipts. Maybe my records were destroyed when I moved, but... Do you have any independent proof? The judge asked. A bank statement? Witness? Photo. Danica's eyes darted to her lawyer. Valen hesitated, then admitted, we have no additional corroboration at this time. Taryn remained at the stand, posture calm. Your Honor, he said quietly, I can also show the audit trail of these files' creation, IP address, device registration, and metadata certificates. They originate from the same laptop registered to Danica Cole, purchased last year. He displayed the data, purchase receipt, serial ID. It was precise, devastating. Valen rose, sweating now. We contest this analysis. The boy is manipulating data to favor his grandmother. Judge Hines cut him off. Enough. I've seen the accuracy certifications for his program myself when it was featured in a state technology brief. She turned back to Taryn. Young man, in your opinion, is there any indication your mother maintained consistent contact or financial support? No, Your Honor, Taryn said. And I can prove she didn't. He opened one last folder labeled Communication Logs 2010 to 2025. Years of timestamps filled the screen, calls made, messages received. All 0 entries from her number after the week she left him on my doorstep. Danica's hands trembled. That can't be right, she whispered. Taryn faced her for the first time. It's the truth, Mom, he said softly. I've kept every trace of it. The judge leaned back, exhaled slowly. Then her voice came low, decisive. I've heard enough. She turned toward the bench. The evidence submitted by Ms. Cole is hereby deemed fraudulent. Full physical and financial guardianship is granted to Ms. Marlene Cole, effective immediately. Furthermore, this court refers the matter to the district attorney for investigation of perjury and document forgery. The gavel fell, a sound like thunder against tile. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Danica's chair scraped sharply against the floor. You're taking him from me? She demanded. He's my son. Judge Hines didn't flinch. He's a young man you abandoned and then tried to exploit. This case is closed. The bailiff stepped forward. Valen muttered something under his breath about appeals, but even he looked defeated. Danica's eyes flicked to Taryn, full of fury and regret tangled together. You think you're smarter than everyone, huh? She hissed. You'll regret making me the villain. Taryn's expression didn't change. I don't need you to be the villain, he said. I just needed the truth. Outside the courthouse, sunlight spilled across the steps, bright and unreal. I turned to him, my voice barely above a whisper. You knew all along. He nodded once. You taught me to keep records, Grandma. I just made them impossible to erase. I wanted to hug him, but I'd learned better. His kind of comfort was space and quiet acknowledgement. So I just said, you saved us. He looked toward the parking lot, eyes soft but steady. We saved ourselves. 3 months later, the DA pressed charges for document fraud and perjury. Danica pleaded no contest. She was sentenced to 18 months probation and 400 hours of community service at the local Autism Resource Center. When I dropped off donated books there one afternoon, I saw her sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading aloud to a nonverbal boy. She didn't see me. I left without speaking, feeling something strange. Not anger, not forgiveness, something quieter than both. 6 months after the ruling, our lives finally settled into something resembling peace. Taryn couldn't legally work in digital verification again. The 4-year non-compete clause from his sale barred him from creating anything similar, but he didn't seem bothered. I already proved what I needed to prove, he said over breakfast one morning, stirring sugar into his tea with the same rhythm he used for coding. He had other plans. I want to start a company that hires people who think like me, he said. People the world calls too different. He called it Signal House, a small startup focused on software testing and data quality assurance. He rented an airy old storefront downtown and filled it with long desks, soft lighting, and noise-canceling headphones. His first employee was Malcolm Reed, a young man I recognized immediately. I taught him 20 years earlier, back when everyone insisted he'd never adjust because of his autism diagnosis. Terrence smiled when he hired him. People like us see the bugs other folks miss, he said. Soon after came Leah James, a former student of mine who'd struggled with dyslexia but could spot pattern shifts faster than any algorithm, then Andre Tillman, a quiet genius with ADHD who tested software like it was jazz. Unpredictable, but flawless by the end. By summer, there were 6 of them, every one of them a reflection of what the world had once underestimated. I visited one afternoon with lunch and found the office glowing with quiet focus. Keyboards hummed. Whiteboards were covered in logic diagrams and gentle reminders like take 5 minutes when overwhelmed and silence helps the signal shine. Malcolm looked up when he saw me. Mrs. Cole, he said, removing his headphones, you once told the principal I wasn't broken, just wired differently. He smiled, small but sure. Your grandson tells us that every morning. I had to look away before tears embarrassed us both. Danica, meanwhile, was still serving her probation at the resource center. The staff told me, unaware of our history, that she stayed late most evenings, helping children paint or sort sensory toys. She's learning from them, one counselor said kindly. I believed it. Maybe some lessons come only through consequence. By the next year, Signal House had landed contracts with 2 mid-sized analytics firms and a state agency. Taryn kept his routines unchanged. Breakfast at 7, work until 5, a nightly walk along the bay. Every Tuesday, I still brought dinner to his apartment. His chipped yellow cup sat by the sink, faithful as ever. That evening, as I rinsed dishes, he spoke quietly behind me. Grandma, he said, I know what you gave up for me. I froze. Taryn, what are you talking about? Your friend stopped visiting. You turned down travel, promotions, things you loved. I heard you once tell Auntie Denise you couldn't go anywhere because of Taryn. He hesitated. You could have sent me somewhere else. But you didn't. My throat went tight. I turned, drying my hands. You're my family, I said. And I don't regret a single day. He nodded, looking down at his hands, then met my eyes for a full, steady second. I know that now. It was the longest silence we'd ever shared without weight. Just peace. I reached across the table, close but not touching, the way we both understood affection. You are worth every bit of it, I whispered. He exhaled softly, the corner of his mouth lifting. I believe you. When I left that night, the sky over Crescent Bay was violet and gold, the streets slick from an earlier storm. I drove the same route home, same turn, same timing, the way he liked it, and when I stopped at the red light near the bridge, my phone buzzed. A text from Taryn. Thank you. For everything. I smiled all the way home. When life tried to erase our truth, we learned how to write it back, line by line, day by day, proof by proof. What started as one grandmother's fight for her grandson became a reminder that what's real always finds a way to stand on its own. Taryn didn't just build software. He built a legacy, a promise that every voice others tried to silence would have a record, a receipt, a reason to be believed. And me? I learned that love isn't measured by the ease of the road, but by the consistency of your steps when the world stops watching. If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Share it with someone who's ever been underestimated, who's ever had to defend what they lived. Tell me in the comments. Would you have done what Marlene did? Like, share, and subscribe to Revenge Tales by Camera for more powerful stories of resilience, justice, and redemption. Because sometimes The quietest battles leave the loudest proof.